Today we're going to be taking a look, of course, at your own colored spheres and get started moving on with the black and white spheres if you're still working on them, and then moving on to the colored spheres. Before we do that, I'm going to really quickly run over some important things you should know, specifically how to use the color picker. Since you're going to be doing colored spheres, you might need to know how to use color. Talk a little tiny itsy bitsy bit about color theory. Then we're going to sneak over next door and do something we probably shouldn't do, which is look at the paintings done by other people in the painting department. After that, we're going to talk a little bit about painting skins. And by skins, I mean not just human skin, though human skin is going to be one of the things we focus on, but also the skins that other things have. For example, plants and animals and other organic matter has a skin that's very different from the skin that a table, for example, has. There's something translucent and alive about it. And that's part we're going to talk about at the end, and then I'm going to let you guys paint colored things. So, to start with, here's your color picker. Now, I realize that I have go away, color picker. I no longer require your services. Watch this. I bet. No, Photoshop is still up. Okay, well, to get to the color picker, you double click on this thing. To make the color picker go away, I have no idea. Apparently the color picker never goes away on my computer. So, here's some basic terms you need to know in terms of color picker. First off, you move this thing up and down, and it switches which basic color you're working on, right? You could all figure that out. In the color picker, anywhere you slide in here is the color that you are working on. So you are working on this type of blue. Your saturation has to do with how far this direction you go. So this and that are equally saturated. Even though they are very different colors, they have a similar saturation. Saturation is how much white or black is in something. This and that are, well, equally bright. This is your brightness-darkness range is up and down. So this and that are equally bright. So this blue and that blue are equally saturated. Of course, this doesn't look like blue, it looks like black, and it is black, but it's equally saturated. So your purest color is here, essentially, and then you drag it any direction out, and you start getting colors that are more mixed. This is very similar as if you put down a big old glob of bright blue paint on your palette, put down some white and some black, and smush them all together. So you can make these similar things with paint. What you can't do with paint, one of the things that's really beautiful about digital work, is very, very easily slide just a little bit down and have a similar saturation. For example, this color. I haven't changed my saturation, I've just changed what color I do. That is not that simple with paint. It's really useful for digital painting in general, because if you want a palette set up with all colors with a similar saturation feel, you can say, okay, I want a painting that has this saturation level. And you can go through and pick all your colors at that saturation level. And just remember where you set it, and all the colors you pick out will be in this muted tone. And you don't have to worry about matching the mutedness the whole way through. Does that make sense? Okay, so a lot of digital painters, when they set out to work, create for themselves a palette, especially if they're coming from actual painting. And they'll say, okay, well, when I paint in this palette, I want to use some of this blue. I don't do this personally, but a lot of painters do. And they'll say, okay, I'm going to have some blue. Oh, wait, hit it on linear dodge. That just affects it strangely. Okay. These painters will use normal when they're painting, not linear dodge. Okay, we'll say I'm going to have some of this blue, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to get specifically this kind of reddish tone. And let's see, maybe if I want green, I want it to be a slightly blue-green. So maybe I'll use this green. And they'll make themselves a palette. And lay out their primary colors for the palette the same way they would if you were laying out your primary paint. And if you're doing this, much like with paint, let's say, do I want some yellow on my palette? I do. But I want it to be a very green yellow because I'm not actually going to pick something right here. Because I'm having a muted color. So this is the kind of yellow I'm going to use. I'm not going to use a bright yellow in this painting. So here's my yellow. This is the palette I want for my work. And much like with physical paint, you can then come down here and make, it's not working very well because my computer's being slow. I'm going to turn my background back on. Use my mixer brush tool. If you turn it up to mix 100%, once again, it doesn't pick anything up. Okay. And you can pull these into each other and mix around, and much like with regular paint, you can make midtones. Okay, here's my kind of new blue-green color that I'm enjoying. Over here, I'm going to pull over and make some purpley color. You can mix colors. I'm going to make a gray tone. And this works with additive, even though people will tell you that computers don't process color the same way, which is true, because on a computer you have light and it's additive mixing. Photoshop fudges it. So if you continue mixing all these things, you will in fact come to a gray tone, because Photoshop is pretending it's paint. So don't get confused on that. So you can eventually mix a nice gray tone here, and you can mix an orange. And the same way that if you're used to painting, you can essentially mix your palette up and create a palette to paint from with your secondary colors and everything else. Yeah. So a lot of painters will do this, and then when they go to paint, they will use their color selector, which is this tool, and they'll say, okay, well, I want my orange, I want my yellow, I want a blue-green, or I want slightly darker, and they'll pick from this the same way they would if they were a physical painter. And if you're coming from painting, you might like doing this, especially if it's very meditative for you to set up your palette. However, it's equally valid to just come in here and pick the colors you want. Now, the problem with just using the color picker to just pick the colors you want is you have to have a sense of color theory. And I've put up some color theory links, I think. They should be up. If not, you can Google color theory links and learn a little about color theory. It's important to keep an eye on your cools and your hot colors the same way it is in real painting. Colors that are nearer to the yellow are warmer. So you've got a very warm orange, for example, and if they're nearer to the blue, they're going to be cooler. So here's your kind of cool greens in here. There's your kind of warm greens down here. And you can still pay attention to this, and you should still pay attention to this. You don't want to just willy-nilly like, I want a green, and just without paying attention, pick any old green through here and assume it's all the same, because it's not. You do want to pay attention to the colors you're picking out. Another way to do this, though, and something that is fun you can only do as a digital painter, is to have a picture that is your inspiration. And I had one open before my computer crashed, so I try to find it again. But if you can find a picture that is of a real world thing, that is kind of, that you can use it as a palette. And I'm going to try to pick one out. I think this is going to be a good one. Hopefully this isn't going to be a naked person. Okay, this is what I had before. Yeah, so this is a close-up photograph of a waxy painting thing I did. And I can say, okay, I want this color blue from it. I want to use this yellow. And in the end, whatever I make will look a little bit like this picture. And if you want something more saturated than what you're finding, you can always pop over and grab a more saturated version of it. So you can use a picture as your palette board as well. And there's a lot of other ways that this can kind of flesh out. I actually, once for fun, laid out a palette in paint because I knew I wanted to use it, and then photographed the palette and picked colors off of it, because why not? Then I knew that the colors I was painting with matched my paint, more or less. So there's all kinds of ways that you can do this for fun, and that's the end of that part of color. So the next thing I teach you about color is just to remind you that you can set a layer to be a color-only layer. And you can do that by picking hue or color from your layer options. Now, really quickly, down here on my background layer, I'm going to paint something. It's just going to put random grayscale and stuff. Okay. So here I have random grayscale. Okay. So currently this layer is set to normal. If I set it down here to hue, If I set it to color, okay, I set it to color, and it will make the things underneath it the same color that those are. So black, of course, because you have to keep in mind, you're thinking about this. True black, no matter what color it is going to stay true black, right? Same thing with white. No matter what color it is, it's going to stay white. It's only when you get in the gray area that your color changes. Does that make sense? So if you lay a color layer over something with black and white, the colors only show up in the areas that are gray. This is going to be really important for you if you start working in grayscale, for example, with your balls. Say make a black and white and gray ball. When you apply color over it, only the gray sections will be affected. The black and white sections will stay essentially black and white. It also means that when you go to paint something that you know you're going to color later, for example, let's say do a grayscale version of your painting, you never want to go all the way to black because those parts will just be black in your final painting. If you want them to be, for example, a dark blue, you can say, well, in the end, I'm going to want it to be a dark blue. It's about that dark. Well, then you can slide over here and be like, oh, well, that's that color gray. Any darker than that, and it's not going to be dark blue. It's going to be black. Make sense? Okay. So that's color and the basics of color picking. It's going to be something that, as you work with it more, you will understand better. Now, what we're going to do is talk a very little bit about colors as you see them versus colors the way the camera sees them, and also about the shortcuts our brain takes. So we're going to talk about science. Okay, so our brain takes shortcuts, and this is a very good thing for our brain to do. No matter what the light is like in the day, if it's really green because you're under a tree cover and all the light's very green, or if you're out in the open, there's a bunch of rocks around, so the light's very red and very shiny. If you see a strawberry, your eye will say, that's a red strawberry, no matter how much green you've put on. However, if there's a whole bunch of green light shining on a red strawberry, and you photograph it, and you use a color picker to tell you what color the strawberry is, it's probably going to be a lot grayer, maybe even kind of purplish, depending on the quality of the green. And it's not that the strawberry is purple, it's also not that the strawberry is red. It all has to do with the way your brain interprets the strawberry. And no matter where you put the strawberry, it'll always seem red to your brain because your brain adjusts for the ambient light. Photographs do not do this. I cannot express how important this is when it goes to painting from photographs. If you are painting digitally or otherwise from photographs, the color that the camera sees is not a very good guide to what color you should paint. So you have to adjust mentally and consciously for the fact that the camera is lying to you about how you would have seen it. Not lying to you about what it really is, because there is no real innate color to things. Color is the light that bounces off of things. It essentially does not exist. It's kind of like money. That's another discussion. But you are a human being. You will always see things the way humans see them, which means you will always see color. And this is not a human being. I'm pointing to my computer. And the camera is not a human being, and it will see color the way it sees it and the way it has been taught to see it. So you have to adjust for this. So for example, skin and things like that, when you just glance at them, your brain will go, that is peach-colored skin, that is dark-colored skin, that is, and you will instantly get an idea in your head, oh, that skin is fill in the blank whatever skin you want to say it is. I know in literature they often use very food-oriented words, like creamy skin or mocha-colored skin. I'm not really sure why. I guess we all like to eat. But generally speaking, you'll kind of instantly identify it, and you won't actually consciously pay attention. Your brain will just fill it in. And there have been all these studies showing that people's brains will fill in data that is not actually there without paying any attention to it. And one of the first things you have to do as an artist is learn to not see the shortcuts your brain has set you. So I'm guessing that again, so a lot of you artists, you've probably done this before. If you think about your hands, you think, oh, my hands are my skin color, whatever you identify your skin color as. If you actually sit there and take a look at your hand for a few minutes, the longer you look at it, the more you will see multiple colors in it. If you stare at your hand really quickly, it'll look peach, brown, blue, whatever color skin you have. And the longer you look at it, the more you will see subtle changes. About a minute into seeing your hand, you will see that your hand is probably partly blue, partly purple, partly red. And the longer you look at it, the more your eye the receptors in your eye can process the wealth of information, and the more they will think about your hand as a rainbowed thing. And this is the reason that a lot of painters, if you look at physical painters and the way they do skin tones, they will use bright green highlights. And there's no way the face has a bright green section on it, but you stare at the face long enough and you start seeing the bright green sections. Now, in the sci-fi, fantasy art, digital painting thing, in this movement that's emerging, there are a lot of shortcuts that have been evolved and have, I would say, become tropes as to how to handle painting skin. Because most people aren't actually looking at something. A lot of times they're not looking at photographs, they're pulling things out of their head. And a lot of times they're not looking at real people, again, they're pulling things out of their head. So some of the tropes about how to paint right when painting skin is that women, but not men, tend to have very red noses. And if you look at some stuff, and I'll send you to look this up, you'll see very red noses with very bright blue highlights through here. And women's skin, but not men's, will have a lot of blue and a little bit of green in all their highlights. And then the shadows will be a little more purple, a lot more pink, some reddish, and so forth. I'm talking about Caucasian women. It's a very different discussion when you're having women of color, though still they tend to have more reds, blues, pinks, and these girly colors. Again, this is a trope. Men tend to have more green painted in their skin. They do not tend to have a very reddish look to their nose. Now the funny thing is, you have some artists. I'll post a couple of them later. I'm trying to think of because on top of my head it's failing me, who are intentionally gender bending these color theories. And for example, and they can easily identify their subjects as, for example, a gay man by painting his nose red with blue highlights, because subconsciously there's this stereotype about gender coloration, which has no bearing on actual reality of people's skin colors. Though there is, to some degree, a element of truth in things like women tend to have softer skin, but they don't always. I think it's because they have to shave so much. So there may be a little bit of reality. It's not nearly as advanced. Now, as artists, you can absolutely embrace this because it's, if you want, because it's a shorthand. It's a nice way to say this is skin done right. You can also choose to bucket and base your drawing on something else. It's a personal choice. You should be aware the trope exists. What is definitely the case when you're painting skin, regardless of how you want to handle gender and skin tone, is that you need to think about multiple colors when painting skin. Now, I had a nice little flesh ball and a bunch of little example layers I was going to show you. As you saw what happened to that. It crashed. It went away. Every time I try to reopen it, it crashes again. So I'm going to show you this tutorial that I also posted for you online that I didn't make. Thank you. That has an example of ways to paint skin tones. Now, what I was going to show you is that when you take a single color section, like let's say, for example, you say, I want my skin to be basically this nice, I don't know, peach color. What a lot of people do without thinking about it is like, okay, so the highlights will be kind of like this color, you know, bright pinky highlights, and the low lights will be this dark brown color down here, and the really dark shadows will be kind of like this, and they'll paint all in one color. This is something that's common among both painters, I should add, and digital painters, where you have people who are like, oh, this is Caucasian flesh tone, I bought it at Utrecht. And they put it down, and they take out their titanium white or permalba, and they put that down, and they take out their black and put that down, and they mix it together, and they have a flesh gradient, and then they have these pink people. Now, as you might be able to tell, I kind of hate this trend with a passion, but if you want to paint pink people, that's how you do it. And in fact, you can paint really pink people by using your dodge and burn tools to just lighten and darken the pink, and turn protect tones on so it never goes anything but pink. You can do this. I recommend against it. The time I don't recommend against it, I'm going to step back for 1 second, is if you are doing traditional comic book color. Traditional comic book coloring has main skin tone, a highlight, and it has very distinct sections. Like you could do it with a vector program. No edging, no blending, and you have pink skin tones, and you have a shadow tone and a highlight tone, and they're very, very precise. You only have 3 of them. And if you look back at older comics, you'll sometimes see that. You'll see it in things like My Little Pony, where they have, a pink skin, and the shadow is a darker version of the same pink, and there's not really anything there. It's just meant for shape. And with something like that, you might be able to get away with, here's my skin tone. They are just slightly darker as my other skin tone, and have it be really close. Even then, I think you should probably pull it a little bit one way or the other, just to give yourself some variation. But if you're going to paint realistic skin tones, what you want to do is get yourself a base note, a peach, brown, mocha, whatever base note, and then use all kinds of other colors to push and pull that note. This is not to say you need to have a bright baby blue pastel dot on someone's skin, but you can use a color like a blue. I'm going to add to this one. I'm just going to pass it down, make it a softer. Yeah, this is more blue. Okay. Not that you need to do that specifically, but you can take your opacity way down and kind of add in some highlights that are the blue color. See, it stays pink. If I go back and go over it, it's still pink, but it's made it a more blue pink. So it's not if you use your color selector, you'd see blue necessarily, but you have altered your base color to become that. Does that make sense? So this is up for you. You can kind of see how you would paint with multiple colors. I want to show you something I did. No, don't say this. If I can find it. Okay. A while ago when I was working on a digital painting, I took photo source for it. And you can see here, in addition to adding different kinds of hair, in the original picture, because it is a camera that has very specific sensitivities, if you look down here at the color picker section, you'll see it's all kind of pink tones. And it's okay. I mean, it's a photograph. It is what it is. But when going through and painting, I'm like, well, what kind of reflected light do I see? Your skin is very reflective. So I've got an orange background. I have more orange reflected tones through here. And you'll see the color range is much broader, again, looking down here, when I actually went through to paint it. I have much brighter whites and also much more colorful deep tones. Good color shadow tones are things like purples are good, greens are good, reds are good, and it gives you kind of depth of color in your shadow. Same time when you're looking at highlight tones, you want to pay attention to what your lighting is in the section and base it on that. One thing that is almost always going to be true for people is that they are going to have a blue or a green, possibly a gray, tone underneath their skin. And so I'm talking about the difference between a table, which is unlikely to have, or a plastic ball, which is unlikely to have undertones, and humans, because humans are all kinds of gushy, goopy stuff shoved into very thin skin. And the skin may be peach brown, whatever, but all the goopy stuff underneath it is different colors. So you kind of, in your head, as grotesque as they sound, you should skin all of your models in your head, just for a minute. And I know, it's grotesque, right? And imagine that underneath their skin, you can see the blue veins, blood being blue before it leaves the body. If you need a scientific explanation for that, see me later. They have blue blood, that is closer to surface someplace than others. Or, they have a kind of red musculature where the skin is thin and stretched, you can see through. And where the skin is thicker and fattier, you may not be able to see through. And they're also highly reflective. So that the skin bounces light back off in places where it's slightly moist or where it's stretched really tight, but in places where it's loose hanging or hairy or really dry, it will not bounce off as much light. So to think about the anatomy of your people and their visceralness and pay attention to that when working with their color. For example, most people have a kind of blue thing here underneath their nose because you've got a really big vein sitting right underneath your nose, which you'll know if you ever busted your lip open. And most people have kind of a blue shadow going across here. You don't paint a giant blue shadow with a blue mustache, that's just creepy. But most people have a kind of bluer tint here. You'll see a lot of blues and purples under the eyes of most people, unless they're wearing so much makeup that you don't see it. And that's because the skin is thinner, and you can kind of see through it into the eye socket cavity. So pay a lot of attention to where color shifts in people because it's important. And if you don't do it, you look like you're painting Barbie dolls, because Barbie dolls are plastic, and they don't have all this fun, goopy stuff underneath. And once again, this doesn't count if you're painting with 2 colors on something that's meant to look comic book. I mean, that is an abstraction. We're talking here about wheels. So really quickly, let me grab you all and go over the other. Come on, we'll get up and try. Her ears bright red, she'll flap things up. Again, there are exceptions. There are ways to do it. You can make it work. Rule of thumb. Okay, so I'm done with color for the moment. I just want to talk a little tiny more about skin, and it's gone. I don't have my skin balls. I guess I can open back up this person's skin balls. So these skin balls are nice in terms of the colors they have. What they don't actually do is look like skin. Okay, so this is great base color, but it looks, well, smooth. It looks like a rubber bouncy ball. This is the same color as skin. So when you're actually working on skin, if you're doing someone who's far away, if you're doing maybe their hands as like the focus point, anything like that, you can just have it like this. Or again, if it's the style you're working for. But if you're pushing towards realism, then you're going to want to add in flaws of various sorts. You may want to add in places where the veining is apparent. You will certainly want to add in a sense of texture. Now you're lucky in that I have given you some texture brushes. Currently I have loaded the same brushes that I put up for you under M's favorite brushes. So, oh wait, no, I take it back. I've loaded a bunch more brushes up here. I was painting the other day. Anyway, down here though, I have a section of the same brushes I gave you. And they're brushes that, let me make one really big so you can see it, that are kind of shaped like that. They have dots and so forth. And don't go crazy with these and color something that looks super grainy. It's not for that. It's for allowing a sense of depth and color in spots on your skin. You will want to pay attention if you're ever doing something that's actually like a skin ball, that you'll have a curve to the texture on the skin as well. So let me show you. I'm just going to grab one of these and pull it up a little bit. See how it's starting to get a little bit of skin texture on it? And I would, if I was doing a good job, I would be switching my colors frequently. So you can have just a very subtle sense of gradation. This is assuming you're close up on your skin ball. You won't be able to see flaws like this from 6 feet away. So if your person is standing way into your scene, don't be like, here's some freckles on them. It'll look, it's like giant pock marks. But if you've got a close-up on somebody, you want some gradation of skin. One really good way to do this, actually, is with your brush tool. Because as you use a brush that has some texture to it, it starts looking a little tiny bit like the little wrinkles on the body. So as you use your brush tool to build up texture on your ball, you'll also start getting a sense of skin. So a combination of brush marks that build texture and an actual brush that is designed for skin texture like this will slowly build things up. And as I see your skin balls, I'll go through and talk to you more about what you're looking at. You can get a startlingly large degree of realism if you want something like this. Just as you go back and forth between different colors of brushes, go back and forth between different textures of brushes, and also do specific lining and so forth. You can use a hard brush, very hard brush to build in specific lines, for example. That's too dark. If you want very specific lines, it would be, for example, under someone's eyes. You can build in very soft, can you see that at all? Yeah, okay, like it's kind of right here. You can build up very soft, dark lines, for example, and then alternate it with the highlights that go above it. And now it's too bright. So see, make some little tiny hard lines, make some lighter things above it. You can start having skin variations, and then using the mixer tool to blend things together. You can make little sags in the body, for example. And again, please bear with me because painting from over here while talking is not the best way to do it. But you can use things that pinch by putting in shadows and highlights on sections. You can use your spotty tools. One of my favorite spotty tools, let's see, is a color burn to just add some freckles and so forth. And you get tools like this with settings. Again, I gave you some of these. You can change your shape dynamics so that you have a jitter, so you don't have the same spots showing up over and over again. You'll probably want to have some scattering. And honestly, you might want some color dynamics. If you do foreground, background jitter, you can get 2 colors of spots. And just kind of build up someone, for example, who is freckled and so forth. And once again, if you can combine something like making dots with, let's go down this one, with a brush tool that kind of fades it in, you can get a sense of skin that is building up directionality. And you need to pay a lot of attention to the directionality of your skin when you're painting skin. It is not, you don't just scribble it on, like, oh, here's my flesh ball, I'm just going to scribble some here, and scribble some there, and kind of got the general feel for what I want. Well, then you lose a sense of the body. Skin stretches a specific way, and to such a degree that if you look at someone's face who has been around for more than 6 or 7 months, you'll see little tiny wrinkles that show how they use their skin. And the older you get, the more these little wrinkles you get, and soon they take over your face. But even with a very young child, there are little tiny wrinkles that'll go near their eyes that show my eyes scrunch here. And it's just something to pay attention to get a feel of how the body moves. And even if you're not going to want to draw in every kind of line unless you're a hyper-realist painter. What you will want to do is maybe make your brush strokes go that direction, or work against it in such a way that it still implies its existence. Does that make sense? Okay. I think that's all I'll talk about. Oh, I guess a little bit about plants. Plants are very much like human skin in that they also have all kinds of little tiny flaws and defects. Right? You can't just go in here with human skin and that, oh, well, I'm going to turn it into a plant by turning it green. I could try. Might actually work. We'll see. No, it didn't work. That's not a leaf. But it is, however, somewhat similar in that you have little tiny dots of imperfections, and you have a sense of luminosity, especially if you're dealing with something like a leaf, for example. And I said you could make a leaf ball or a wood ball. Wood's pretty solid. You still have a little bit of luminosity any time that you have, for example, a thin bark over a thick inner tree. But a leaf, you can see through a little bit. You've got light shining through it, so where it's thicker, for example, in the veining, it'll be much more solid looking and less translucent. And where it's thinner, you'll have a little bit of light coming through it. It'll be lighter in color because from the background light. It'll show more of the background light. Things like that. It's something to keep in mind when working with plants. I should not have turned that yellow. One last thing I'll tell you about reflection, both for human skin and for leaves and everything else, is that what background you have matters. Now, currently this is on a white background. I'm about to take that white background away. Okay, so if you have your flesh ball on a white background, then that white will kind of reflect off the entire edge of the ball. So you'll have, it's very neutral, but along the edges of the ball, even in the most shadowy places, there'll be a little tiny bit of white. And again, this ball sucks because this ball is very pixelated. But all along the edges, you'll have a little tiny bit of white because it's against a white background. That white shines through and informs it. And where you have more reflections, like down here where it's reflecting the white. Let's see. Where it's reflecting the white, it's actually going to be kind of gray. And up here where it's reflecting the light, it's going to be kind of gray because the white light is reflecting it, right? So where, take off that last one. Where it is most interacting with its environment, it will be most gray. Now, on the other hand, if what you have is a blue background, go back to where I drew white on it. You didn't really want you to be blue, did you? Okay, if you have a blue background, then what you're going to be dealing with here is a certain amount, set this layer of color up here, a certain amount of blue that will bleed over into the ball as well. So, and it won't be quite that much. You have to blend it in, but that you would have a degree of blue light reflecting, especially in the shadows, and probably where it meets the red, it's getting more purple. And now it'll feel more like it's in the space. But regardless of what you have, you're going to have some reflectivity, and again, the more reflective your object, the more reflective it gets. And also along the very, very edges of everything, there will be a color blur. And if you ever take photographs, you can kind of see this. If you try cutting somebody out of a black background, well, all the edges of their skin are kind of dark brown. You put them on a white background, God, that looks so cut out. And you can erase down to past all the black, but then you've cut off part of their body. So it is true, not only in photography, but also in daily life, that you just don't see sharp edges of things. There's a degree of blur, in part because we have two eyes. So the eyes are creating the three-dimensional effect. Most of us have two eyes. I think everyone's class has two eyes. your eyes are creating this two-dimensional effect, and so you're actually, if you close one and the other, you'll see someone jump back and forth, right? Which means that always on the edges of people, you are not seeing a whole person there. You are seeing part of them and part of their background, and your eyes is taking a little bit of color from each. So the background colors affect your, people are a little bit see-through, I guess that's the best way to put it. All people are a little bit see-through. Okay, I think I'm done for now. Did you guys have any specific questions about color and making skin balls? Okay, good. I want your balls in my hand by Tuesday. I know. Okay, but I'm going to say this like this because maybe they'll help you remember. You can just put a mental note in my head. My balls need to be in her hand by Tuesday. All of them. Yes, all your balls in my hand by Tuesday. Yeah. If you don't like that mental image, I need your spheres on my desk by Tuesday. Yeah, I know. There's no way to say it. So the point is, all of them done. This is the boot camp stage. All of them done, along with the line drawings. You didn't get the line drawings done before. So work through the weekend. Cancel your social events. Say goodbye to your parents. Whatever. What? I don't remember exactly. It's over 20. Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot. Honestly, they shouldn't be taken. You can breeze through some of them. If one's like, okay, I got this, you can breeze through it. But, I mean, honestly, you're going to be spending 10 minutes at least a piece. So you're looking at a bunch of hours, which I need you to put in a bunch of hours, because putting in a bunch of hours is how you learn how to do this. So, I mean, if you want to spend half an hour each, that's even better if you can get through 20 and a half an hour piece. I know, that's like 10 hours worth of work. But this is the boot camp. I promise it'll get better. It's like those infomercials. It will get better. But boot camp first. Go make a gazillion balls before your other teachers give you too much homework. Have your other teachers given you a lot of homework yet? Oh, I'm sorry. Well, again, if you can't get through all the balls, then you bring it to me unfinished. But we're not doing balls after Tuesday. Well, we are actually, but we're not doing the same balls. We're doing different balls. We're doing art history balls. Yeah. So the rest of the time is yours to work. I kept it under an hour this time. And we are done. So that's 2 hours right now that you have to do balls. So